This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
And this is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, show, movie, or show. Each episode, you can find back episodes at OV151.com, find the blog at ObsessiveViewer.com, and subscribe to the subreddit at r/ObsessiveViewer. In addition to that, you can also help support the podcast at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer, or really, you can leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps out a ton. So, Tiny.
Sir.
Yeah, okay.
Sir. I don't know.
So to start out, we have some announcements to go through.
Yes.
Because
everyone, take your seats. Announcements.
Yes, announcements. Pizza, sit down. Anyway, so this past month, we're recording this at the end of January, and this past month, I was on three podcasts doing a total of 4 podcast guest episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been busy. So I just wanted to run through them and let you guys know where you can find my voice if this is not enough for you. So first up is I did a guest spot on The Nerd You're Looking For, which was on January 4th. The episode title is Our Top 10 Favorite Films of 2015. I think I already mentioned it on a past episode, but I'll just throw it out here again. On it, I talked about MoviePass, my top 10, and my least favorite movie of 2015. You can find that at thenerdspodcast.com. And then these last 2 weeks, I did 2 guest spots on the Film Schlubs podcast. The episode titles are Movie Talk number 32, which was the Oscar nominations 2016 episode, and Movie Talk number 33, which was the Brooklyn review episode. So in the Oscar nominations episode, we talked about the Oscar nominees. I gave a review for the movie The Forest, and we also talked about some news and some trailers. And then in the Film Schlubs number 33 episode, we reviewed Brooklyn, and I also gave my thoughts on Blue Ruin, Psych Season 1, and The Boy. So you can check those out at filmschlubspodcast.com. And finally, coming out next week, I think you said next week, sometime at the beginning of February, basically, I was on the Jeff Vebert podcast.
Nice.
Which was different. Was totally different because it's not like a movie and TV podcast. It's just a comedy podcast.
Okay. You were out of your element a little bit.
A little bit, and I'm kind of nervous because anyone that's listening to this, that goes on to listen to this, they're going to listen to me talk about like some very different things.
Okay.
Yeah, I talk a little bit about Pizza Roll, the official mascot of Obsessive Viewer.
Oh.
And we also talk some dating stories.
Ooh, I can't wait.
And some job interview stories. It was fun.
Wow.
So that's where I've been the last month.
Nice. I'm really excited that you saw Blue Ruin.
Oh, nice.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you can listen to Film Schlubs number 33, but whatever.
No, listen to us.
Okay, yeah. So this episode we were originally going to review The Revenant.
Yes.
But circumstances led us not to be able to do that.
AKA, I haven't seen it yet.
Right. Which is fine. I think we're going to do that next week.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I threw this out there to you, Tiny, when we were hanging out last Thursday. We're going to review Bone Tomahawk, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It's from last year. It's a Western starring Kurt Russell and Matthew Fox and Richard Jenkins.
Yep.
Yeah. But before we get to the review of Bone Tomahawk, Tiny, we saw a movie on Thursday.
We totally did.
We did.
For my birthday.
Right.
Yes.
So back in December, Tiny's birthday was January 16th. And so back in December, Indie Film Fest and the IMAX at the State Museum, at the Indiana State Museum, they announced that they were going to have a special screening of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the classic Stanley Kubrick movie from 1968. And they were going to screen it in 70 millimeter. So I saw this tweet, and I didn't have much money in my bank account, but I was like, no, okay, I'm just going to buy it. So I immediately bought 2 tickets, one for me and Tiny. And it was a birthday gift, and so we saw 2001: A Space Odyssey on the big screen, on the big screen.
Yeah, the biggest screen possible.
Yeah, on 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
So Tiny, what did you think of that experience?
It was pretty cool. I mean, just the fact that we're movie nerds, so we understand the importance of 70 millimeter in an IMAX theater.
Right.
We get that. And it was really cool to think while you're there, maybe a few thousand people around the world have seen it this way. Even when the movie was originally released, I think it was in 35 millimeter.
I think so. I'm not sure.
So, yeah, I mean, even all those millions of people who saw it years ago, they saw it in 35 millimeter. So this is just like a rare opportunity, and it was just cool to see it in that format. I had never seen it in film before. I'd only ever seen it on DVD and Blu-ray.
Which a few years ago we actually saw it at the Museum of Art at the Toby Theater. On they originally wanted to screen it on 35 millimeter, but they couldn't. I think the print that they got was too damaged, so they ended up just screening the Blu-ray, which was incredible. Any opportunity to see that movie on a big screen is well worth going to, no matter the format. But
yeah,
seeing it on 70 millimeter was just such a special thing. And it's also worth mentioning that I got there about probably 45 minutes before they started the movie, and the way that the lobby is set up there, they have two doors that lead into the theater off to the side, but for some reason the about 12 to 20 people that were there for that screening, they were all in a line, but they were just in the center of the lobby. And there was no directions of where they would be seated, where they should form a line and everything. So I just went ahead and just walked over to the door. So we were the second or third people to get into the actual screening, which means that we got freaking perfect seats.
Yeah, perfect.
It was amazing. And what I kept thinking about during that was that, man, this is such a rare opportunity. I will likely never have this opportunity again to see this movie in this format on this screen. And that was just amazing. And that movie, God, I posted this on Letterboxd, but it's like a great piece of art in that every time I see it, I come away from it with a new appreciation for it, a new interpretation of it. And it's a movie that every time I see it, it's like the first time I'm seeing it ever. And it's amazing. And I'll never get sick of seeing it, and I will see it as many times as I can on a big screen.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, but honestly, I think I appreciated the Blu-ray version we saw a little bit more.
Really?
It was great to see it in 70 millimeter. It had that
Happy birthday.
No, I mean, it had all the charm of seeing something on film. I totally appreciated that, but it's just such a visually stunning movie, and the sound is incredible. It's some of the best music to ever be put on film,
right?
Without question. And just I think it's preferable to see that and experience all that in the most crisp and perfect way possible. And I think the Blu-ray version that we saw really embodied that, as opposed to this one. It's really just a different aesthetic each time. It's different ways of charm, if you will. No way is necessarily better than the other,
right?
But I think I kind of prefer that the most crisp version possible.
I agree, and it's interesting because there's a romanticizing of film that's and it's well, I mean, to see a movie on film is incredible, and it's increasingly rare. But I know what you mean. It's okay. So the 70 millimeter film that we saw was made or whatever in 2001 is when he said. So it's about 15 years old. It was a little scratchy. It had some popping sounds and everything, but overall it looked amazing. And as the movie progressed, it looked better and better. But yeah, and seeing it in a pristine Blu-ray transfer really is anytime I see it on Blu-ray at home is still. It's awe-inspiring because it's so crisp and clear. I pick up on little details here and there that I never really noticed. So people like to people like to romanticize the film stock experience and everything. And I mean, with good reason and everything, but also it comes with the slight demonization of digital and digitized formats and everything, which I don't think that they're one or the other, really. So yeah, but seeing it on 70mm was amazing and breathtaking, and one of the best theater going experiences I think I have ever had. So
agreed. It was cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
So thank you to Indie Film Fest for putting that together, and for not selling out the tickets before I was able to buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, having said that, do you want to go ahead and get into our review of Bone Tomahawk? Which,
absolutely.
Yeah, which is worth it's worth saying that I just finished it about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So I was getting the equipment set up as Tiny was walking into my apartment, and the credits had just started rolling when he walked in. So it's this is a very fresh take on the movie from my part. So, Tiny, do you want to give like a plot description? I know I'm kind of springing that on you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Bone Tomahawk is a Western. I believe it's set post Civil War in the West, in the desert area, and basically there's just a pretty standard desert town with a sheriff played by Kurt Russell, and a drifter kind of comes to town with some questionable influences, and they're not really sure why he's there, and he talks about running into some, quote unquote savages out in the wilderness, and his partner was killed, and there's all this mystery, and it leads to, I don't want to give stuff away. It kind of there's a kind of a classic Western conflict that happens, and it kind of involves a ragtag group of guys heading off to confront these people, and it's it has some very classic elements to it, and with kind of a unique spin on it. So
yeah, well done. Yeah, I would have just said there's a group of people that go out on an expedition to rescue some people.
Context, Matt.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So Bone Tomahawk has been getting a lot of press on the internets recently, where my main takeaway, the first thing that I thought really when watching it was, and this might be because I just recently watched The Hateful Eight, is that I swear, anytime or like if it was announced that Kurt Russell was going to only appear in Westerns for the rest of his career, I will be a very happy person, and I will see every single one of those movies.
Agreed.
Because there's something about his presence that is so inherently Western.
Absolutely.
And so he has such a command of that. I don't want to say archetype, but he has a command of that persona that is so intrinsically tied to the Western genre.
Yeah.
And in Bone Tomahawk, I think I ran through his IMDb, and I might be mistaken, but I think he's only done 3 Westerns. I think he's only done Tombstone, The Hateful Eight, and now Bone Tomahawk.
That sounds right, that I can think of.
Yeah, if anyone knows of any others or whatever, let us know. So that was my first immediate thought. My other immediate thought was, is that David Arquette? But
I actually thought when I was watching it, I heard the voices of the first 2 characters, and I was like, "Is that Sid Haig?"
Oh yeah,
because that's who it was. Sid Haig. He has a very distinct voice.
Right, and the cast is amazing. Really,
yeah, it is
all across the board. Sid Haig, David Arquette, Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox. Richard Jenkins, who I have in my notes. I have in my notes about at the 3/4 mark of the movie, I put, "Holy Chicory is Richard Jenkins," because I did not recognize him.
Yes, I had a similar reaction.
Yeah, it was amazing. So basically, the main thrust of this movie is that these 4 characters are kind of thrust into this. I don't want to say adventure, but thrust into this rescue mission, basically, to find people that have been captured from their settlement, I guess, of Bright Hope. And so it's a nice setup, and I really like the Western setup, basically. I mean, like you said, it's very it's a very Western kind of setup, basically. And I really like the way that the four characters interact with each other, and I felt like each one was very well drawn. However, what did you think of Matthew Fox?
I can think of 5 actors who would be better suited for that role, but I it's biased because I love the guy because he was in Lost, but
yeah.
I thought he was fine. I really didn't have a problem with it. I can't really. I don't think of Matt Fox as like the heroic kind of like shoot 'em up guy. I don't really think of him that way. But
yeah,
maybe this character wasn't necessarily that. He was just kind of a ruined character, a ruined man, sort of. He had this amazingly traumatic event happen in his life that's influenced how he's become a man and what he's done with his life, and I can understand that. I don't know. I really didn't have that big of a problem with it, but I think a lot of people probably were like, really, Matt Fox for this role?
Yeah.
And I get it. But I really didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I think that his... I have in my notes here, Matthew Fox is a little stiff, but I want to like him so much.
I know.
And I just really didn't buy him as you said, as he's like kind of like an outlaw or gunslinger or kind of a Doc Holliday-esque persona. And I didn't buy it. I just didn't buy it. And it's kind of it's a little muddled in itself. It's not, the fault isn't totally on Matthew Fox's performance, because it's a little muddled in that even from his appearance, he's all dressed in white, a very nice suit. And so like I in my notes, I'm like kind of picking apart, like trying to figure out which one, which characters I put. Okay, he's obviously rich. Is he like the mayor of the town or something? And that's not really the case, as far as I could tell. And also kind of later in the movie, well, no, that'll head into spoilers, so I'll scratch that. But one of the, I don't know, I felt like his character arc through the movie was a little, it could have been a lot better, and if it had a better actor or a better suited actor, really, to perform it, it could have really been the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah.
Like you said, he has this dark history that comes to light late in the movie, but you don't really get the sense that he's really concealing it that much.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it comes out a little bit here and there. But it's not really a focal point of the movie. However, when they first set up camp and there's an altercation with someone approaching the camp, there's this really nice, and this is something that I just love in movies in general, is that there's kind of this back and forth point of contention or this conflict between Matt Fox and Kurt Russell, in that they're kind of both trying to take charge of their expedition, and that Kurt Russell's the sheriff and Matthew Fox is just this, it's said, wild gunslinger guy. And so they have this conflict, and I kind of wish that would have been explored better throughout the course of the film. But it was just kind of localized to that altercation, really.
Yeah. I will say that he didn't overact, though.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
He has a tendency, he's had a tendency to do that in the past. God, what was that movie he was in with Medea?
Alex Cross?
Alex Cross.
Yeah.
Dear, that was just 90 minutes of heavy breathing from Matt Fox. Yeah, so he has a tendency to do that, but I think he kind of kept that in check in this movie pretty much. So that's one thing I'll say on his behalf.
It was a lot more subdued.
Yeah.
It was a very subdued performance, and I don't think, but I don't know. It's like someone gave him. I haven't seen Alex Cross, so I'm just going off of your analysis of it. But it's like someone gave him that note, and then he decided to just do that for future roles in general.
Right.
Because I feel like the character could have had a little bit more flair to him. Like, I compared him to Doc Holliday, and I mean, Val Kilmer knocked that role out of the park in Tombstone.
Yeah.
And granted, it's also tough to gauge that, because it's not like in an alternate universe, Matthew Fox would have embraced the role better and done a more animated job, and then we would have been drawing comparisons to, oh, he's just trying to imitate Val Kilmer. So it's a double-edged sword that way. But
true.
What we have is just a little. It's just a little under the surface than what I would have liked.
Yeah.
From that character, especially since the character itself is such a magnificent in a stature way, I guess. In a stature way. That's a weird wording, but anyway. So that's Matthew Fox. What did you think of Kurt Russell and Richard Jenkins and who was that?
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson. There we go.
Yeah.
So let's just go through each character basically.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, for me, the standout was Richard Jenkins. This role was just like unlike anything I've ever seen him in. He usually plays a very he usually plays at least quasi-intelligent characters and very sometimes kind of like very quiet characters. But in this movie, his character's kind of a dullard, just kind of a unintelligent, uneducated, kind of like a tumbleweed. He just kind of gets caught up in this conflict. But he's an interesting character because he's a bit of a fish out of water here. He's the deputy. He's a sheriff's deputy for some unknown reason. It's weird because he's an older man. He's very forgetful. He's like
I think he's like the under deputy or something like weird.
Like that. Yeah. I don't know. Backup deputy. I think that's what they call him.
Yeah.
Backup deputy. But he had this cool inflection he did with his voice. Again, he has a very distinct voice, and he camouflaged it really well in this movie. It didn't stand out really. I think he really just took hold of that character and did something really special with it. It could have been a very forgetful character, but I liked the way that he interacted and influenced the sheriff. I thought they were two very interesting. That juxtaposition was cool to watch. How they interacted with one another. Kurt Russell as the sheriff, I thought was a pretty standard sheriff, Western sheriff character.
He was a pretty standard Kurt Russell in a Western character, really.
Yeah, he was. I haven't seen The Hateful Eight, but
right. There is a common theme there.
Is there? Okay. Yeah. I just love him. Matt said he just has that physicality and the presence, the aura of a Western sheriff. He just pulls it off so incredibly well, and I love to watch him do it. I don't want to sound like he's an empty character. He's the same character we've seen in every other Western, and that he's just not different because he does make it his own.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of sticking to your guns, if you will, and playing the kind of standard sheriff character. It's a classic, and classics are classics for a reason.
Yeah.
Patrick Wilson was pretty good as well. I think the very few scenes he had to kind of develop his character, I thought were pretty well done. You totally understand and buy his devotion to his wife,
right?
And why, despite the fact that he's very severely injured, he sets out on this journey with just insurmountable odds,
right?
And it's like, this guy's gonna die. It's just it's like this is terrible. Why would you do this? But at the same time, you understand. It's like, you know what? If that was my wife, I'd be out there too. I don't care what was wrong with me,
right?
So he's kind of.
If it was my Jennifer Lawrence,
Yes,
yeah.
There you go. If it was your pizza out there.
Well.
Oh my God.
Anyways,
he was an everyman, but a very heroic one, and his character was really cool. I appreciated that, and I've never been overly impressed by Patrick Wilson.
Really interesting.
I mean, I don't think he's a bad actor by any stretch. I think he's a pretty good actor, but I've never been blown away. I've never been like, man, I'm really excited Patrick Wilson's in this movie, or he's never gripped me like that. I was way more excited to see Richard Jenkins in this movie than I was to see Patrick Wilson. But I don't want to discredit him or anything like that.
Right.
He did a good job. I think he was a great choice for the character.
I guess really the only movie that I've really liked Patrick Wilson in, well, I don't know. I haven't seen Fargo season 2, but the one that immediately jumps to mind is Hard Candy.
Oh yeah, he was good.
Really
in that.
hard movie to watch.
Yeah, he was very good in that.
Yeah,
it's a very candy movie to watch.
Yeah. Oh God. Anyway.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so yeah, I really enjoyed the performances all around. Richard Jenkins, he is like a chameleon in this movie. I did not recognize him from that, and it even got to the point where later in the movie, Patrick Wilson. Richard Jenkins' performance is incredible. I don't think the character was written quite to my liking that much. Like you said, he's kind of a dullard, and that was a really good dynamic between him and the sheriff in the movie, but I felt like toward the end, it felt like it was just a little overbearing. It's like I wrote in my notes that Chicory is a little too dim-witted, and then that was right before my Chicory is Richard Jenkins revelation. So there were some scenes that he basically there are scenes later in the movie where he says something, and it's a weird. There's one in particular that I'm thinking about. Maybe we can do a spoiler section, and then I'll cut it to the end of the episode. But there's one instance where he has a line of dialogue where he and Kurt Russell have a back and forth, and it's very much like it's more of a informing the audience of what's going on rather than any character building or anything like that. It feels out of place given the context of that scene, and we can speak more to it in spoilers, but it was just it didn't take me out of the movie, but it just kind of felt a little too much for me, and that's when I wrote down that he's a little too dim-witted. But I did like that he had this kind of sorrow to him, because he had lost his wife, and he kind of had that kind of charm to him, I guess. That history gave him a bit of charm, and I could really go along with him. And there's a great scene between him and Matthew Fox kind of early in the movie where they're kind of talking about each man's kind of lot in life, basically, or their station in life. And you really get a good sense of their philosophies and their personal positions toward what a man should be, really. And that was a really good scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said in passing, Kurt Russell was just amazing. And you're right, he's playing kind of a similar role and everything. Did I say that, or did you say that?
I think we both
agreed.
Yeah.
No, but he's kind of playing a kind of signature Kurt Russell Western character, but that's such a role that is so made for him. And this movie was great. Of the other two Westerns I can think of his, this might be my least favorite performance of those three.
Okay.
But that's only to say that The Hateful Eight and Tombstone were phenomenal, both in terms of his performance and the movies themselves, from my perspective. So it's really hard to gauge.
I was kind of curious what you thought of kind of like the overall like style or like aesthetic they kind of chose for this, because it had kind of a... Pretty much any Western is gritty, so that's kind of a given, but it's like, I think like a lot of the characters and the set pieces weren't these like really grand, polished, perfect to scale or whatever, like perfectly done Western things.
Right.
They kind of had this, it was kind of plain. It was kind of, there weren't like these big fancy gowns that everybody was wearing or anything. It was just a very plain stylistically movie, and I really kind of appreciated that, because I feel like the West is a little bit glamorized in Westerns, for obvious reasons, and it's a very romantic notion, but I think in reality the West was just very gruff, and everything was very plain, and there really was not a lot of glory, and it's kind of romanticized, and I just kind of appreciated that aspect to the movie, I guess. I don't know, how did you feel about it?
It's worth mentioning that this was written and directed by S. Craig Zahler, Zahler. This is actually his directorial debut.
Okay.
And yeah, to speak to your point about the, I guess, scale of it, is that you're right. It did have this kind of contained, very small scale. It felt like it was a really well done, low budget Western. And what I really appreciated about that, and what really impressed me about that, is that it's clearly a pretty low budget film, but the scope of it, like the journey that these people are going on to get to save the people that they care about, is pretty grandiose in itself.
Yeah.
And some of the sequences of them on their journey is kind of, it's at the expense of it kind of making it a little dry in the middle. Like it's a little slow moving because the scenery doesn't necessarily change, but just the way that the movie accomplished what it did in terms of gore, because holy crap.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that in spoilers, but I did enjoy the aesthetic of it and how it was designed and how the production came together, really. And maybe that's part of the reason why Matthew Fox was dressed so differently, is to give more of an impression of them being in a, like, kind of a subliminal connection to show us that it's a big community, basically. Because in the actual community of Bright Hope, we only get like a couple of different sets. There are a few sets, really. There's the bar, and then there's the jail, and then there's a couple houses, but we don't really see like the classic Western shot of the entire settlement from the outside, and all of the sets and everything, like you said.
Someone riding in on a horse or something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Like Doc Brown and Marty McFly riding in and Back to the Future Part 3. Anyway, so at that expense it was a little slow, but
well, to add to that, I thought also to also talk about the style, the dialogue and the way that the dialogue was read, I guess. It just, to me, it kind of had a strange cadence to it. I guess like the way it was recited, it seemed a little stiff.
Okay.
It almost felt like we were, like someone recorded a stage play. To me, it just kind of had a weird feeling to it. I really wish I could elaborate on it or really pin it down, but I don't know. Maybe it was just the attempt to make everything have like a proper language to it, I guess, which is sort of common in Westerns, I guess. Right. I don't know. I think it had kind of just a tiny tilt out of place feel to it, as far as like the scene changes and transitions and the way the dialogue was said, and I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it or really articulate it, but
right.
It just had kind of a strange feeling to it. I don't think it detracted from the movie that much. It was just something you kind of had to adjust to, I think. Part of it, I think, was the minimal music. There wasn't a lot of music in it.
That's right. There's like one like bit of kind of not uplifting, but kind of adventurous music when they're setting off on their journey, and then after that, I didn't really pick up a score.
Yeah, which is just very out of place for a Western.
Yeah,
they're kind of known for their signature music, and
right?
This didn't really have that.
It's funny because I just read on IMDb on the trivia that the final movie represents the first draft of the script, which I'm curious if that means that that's the dialogue as written, or if there was some improv going on or some ad-libbing going on or anything like that. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to discredit it. I don't think it was a bad choice. It was just different. It was something I just kind of had to adjust to.
Okay, I for one, in terms of at least the dialogue itself, I really loved the dialogue. It felt very. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it felt authentic. It just felt natural, like a naturalistic style to it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up the budget, but
okay,
the budget was $1.8 million. So
wow, okay,
according to IMDb.
Okay, well, they achieved a lot with that then.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and did we mention is this an Amazon Prime original?
No,
it's not. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was.
No, it was. I think it had a limited release, and I don't know the background of it, but
okay.
No.
I kind of wish it was. It would be a lot more impressive, I think. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, I will also say that the aesthetic of the savages that they're chasing after was, I mean, the way they looked was really, really impressive.
It was effective as hell.
Absolutely.
It really was.
Absolutely.
It was kind of scary. Like it had like horror elements to it.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in spoilers, but there are certain sound effects throughout the movie that it's almost like those were in place of the actual score.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, that, and then also anytime there's like a gore heavy piece of violence, which isn't really that often throughout the movie, but anytime there is, like from the beginning, I just thought like the sound is so like that takes precedent over it. It's kind of it's a limited budgeted movie, so they kind of had to. I assume that they had to economize their visual effects for the violence, but there are cuts away from it that like where the sound is so present that it's like seeing it. It's a really interesting sensory perception exercise in this movie.
That's a good point. I agree.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and cut this off here.
Okay.
Do you want to give kind of some overall thoughts and like a rating?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, and how do you want to do ratings from like now on? Because we usually do out of 10, but we're both on Letterboxd, so.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's kind of tough. Do we stick with what we know and then adjust for Letterboxd, or?
I've always been a much bigger fan of the 10 scale.
Okay, we can stick to that.
And that's what I prefer, honestly.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
It's your day, your birthday was anyway. Go ahead.
Overall, I thought it was a really cool movie. I liked it. I thought it was a very it's definitely a classic Western, and it has that aesthetic to it, but they really made it their own, and they kind of spun some of the stereotypes, and I think we didn't really talk much about the female character in this movie. The female characters in this movie.
Right.
There were more than one. They were not your typical Western damsels in distress, which I thought was a very bold choice and something that I'm appreciative of, because I think that's a boring character choice.
Yeah.
So it was a evolutionary movie and a different approach to this classic genre in that respect, and I appreciated all those choices a lot. It was a really effective movie. It had these great Western adventure tones to it, and it had some horror elements. It had some action elements to it, and in the midst of all that, there were these pretty interesting characters that I thought it was really fun to watch them interact with each other. And that's all around. All the characters are just I really enjoyed a lot. So I'd probably give it a really solid 7, maybe 7.5 out of 10.
Nice.
I liked it a lot. It has its shortcomings, but for what it was, I thought it was just a great movie.
Nice. I'll echo most of those sentiments. I think that it was a little, like I said, it was a little slow moving in the middle, and I kind of wish that there was more of a through line with the character interactions, because throughout most of the movie you have these 4 central characters that are on this journey, and they each have different viewpoints of what they should be doing, and they're all kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're all in it for different reasons, but there's very clear motivations, really, and that's one thing that, to its credit, that it was done really well, is that you have Patrick Wilson, who's wanting to get his and then you have Matthew Fox, who's kind of this intimidating factor that's a lawless entity, really.
Yeah.
And then you have Kurt Russell, who's the sheriff, the representative of the law. And then you have this kind of damaged, kind-hearted, dim-witted character in Richard Jenkins' character. So these elements mesh together really well, but there's some certain elements that didn't really connect with me, and I feel like they could have been made for a stronger narrative in that middle section. But it became more of a journey toward a conclusion that I did appreciate the kind of almost horror-like elements that came at the end, but I kind of wish that there was a little more in that center, in that middle chunk, and a little more characterization amongst the 4 characters.
Okay.
There was some good characterization there, and like I'm not discrediting that, but yeah, I kind of wish there was a little bit more. And then, as we said, Matthew Fox was he did well enough, but that character, I feel like, should have been a little more imposing. All of that is to say that the movie was very well done, in my opinion, despite those problems that I had with it, and I really appreciated the way that it included some horror elements into it. And what they did with the budget they had was just really astounding. So I guess my grade for it would be probably about a 7. A good 7. I'll probably give it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd. So
cool.
Yeah. So that is Bone Tomahawk. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a spoiler section, which I think I might just keep it in the main section of the podcast like we did with Making a Murderer.
I like that.
Yeah, because like last week for Making a Murderer, I just had like spoiler music playing, and then that, did that. So check the timestamps. I'm going to record a special spoiler announcement here, so you'll know when to skip ahead. So spoilers for Bone Tomahawk starting now. Okay, as stated, we're heading into spoilers. That's what this music is denoting right now. If you are too lazy to check the actual show notes, or if you're in a position where you can check the show notes, and you want to skip the spoiler section, go ahead and skip ahead to 5440 for us talking about Amazon Prime Instant Streaming. Or if you just want to skip to OV Potpourri, skip to 5806. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the rest of the episode. So like I said, I really liked the way that it incorporated horror elements. And one thing that I didn't really like was that the plot description gave away that they were cannibals.
Oh yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, I wish that they would have had saved that for a surprise. But what the plot description didn't say was that it was supernatural elements. It's like ancient, like Indian burial ground. Not really ancient because it's of the time, but
right.
It was a disturbed burial ground, which I really liked how that piece of supernatural lore was incorporated in such a grounded way within the narrative. It was just like, okay, yeah, these guys are somewhat supernatural, so let's break out of here or something.
Yeah,
it was very natural, and it didn't take precedence over the actual thing. So, what did you think of the actual savages, as they were called?
That's one of the things I really appreciated about it, the fact that they made it their own, because again, it's a classic scenario, this cowboys and Indians thing. We've seen it in tons of westerns. It's part of the genre, but this is different in that there's this supernatural element to it, and there's this disturbing horror element that they're cannibals. That made it very unique, and I think it really upped the stakes and made it so much more intense. And I think I think the westerns from the middle 20th century up until the 80s or late 70s maybe were fairly prejudiced in their depiction of Indians and Native Americans, and this movie didn't really say, well, these guys are Indians, so they're the bad guys. It's these guys are cannibals, so they're the bad guys.
Right.
So that was an interesting choice, and I think it made it a little more accessible for a modern audience. I think so. That was a cool choice. But then the Indians themselves, the tribe, they were just terrifying. I mean, they looked like ghosts, and they wore these animal pelts and bones, and they had like
white ash all around them.
Yeah, they had like boar tusks attached to their bodies. It's just really, really grotesque, but incredibly effective. I mean, incredibly effective for the characters. I thought it was a really, really cool choices, and just scary and eerie. And you mentioned the sounds.
Yes,
the noises they made.
That was frightening.
Yeah,
frightening.
Which had a practical explanation, which I enjoyed, because
Me too.
It would have been ridiculous if they would have. It's ridiculous when you have humans making these guttural, animalistic sounds that just you can't make as a human being,
like Obi-Wan Kenobi in the special edition of New Hope.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
It would have been stupid, and it kind of bothered me at first, but then they provide this practical explanation as to how they can make those sounds, and I was like, okay, well, that makes sense, and I like that. It gives it its own spin, and it
actually made it integral to the actual plot and to Patrick Wilson's character. His through line, or his his arc, really.
Yeah. And it also kind of dehumanized the Indians a little bit. You know, they didn't have a language. They just they communicated with each other like animals.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a cool choice.
Oh yeah. So we talked a lot about Matthew Fox in the non-spoiler section. So I'll just touch on this briefly to kind of follow up on that. He did have this kind of tortured backstory where he his mother and sister were killed, raped and killed, I believe. And then there's kind of a question of how many Indians have you killed, and he finally reveals that it's 116, and like it's a really good scene. I really like that they followed through on that, but I kind of wish we would have seen more of his skills as a gunfighter.
Yeah,
because we really only see when the two guys come to their camp. Mm-hmm. And then like it's kind of to add insult to injury when he's kind of about to die. Like his last words to Kurt Russell are, "I shall kill as many as I can," and like that's really badass and that's really cool. He kills one.
Yeah.
It's like I kind of wish that like that character has such stature, mm-hmm. and he's been built up so much. It's like, you know, let him have like his day, really.
Right. But I think that occurrence and the fact that he is kind of stifled at the end and doesn't go out in the big badass fashion in a blaze of glory, I think it was a bit of a setup for what Patrick Wilson's character achieves at the end.
Sure.
He's the injured, crippled everyman.
Right.
And he turns out to be an absolute badass and kind of outsmarts these Indians and ends up kind of saving the day as a result.
That's true. And he did like there was like altercations or there was a conflict between him and Matthew Fox, and when Matthew Fox is injured, he actually says something to the effect of, "I'd rather be dead than be a cripple." And yeah. So that does kind of connect there, and I did appreciate that, but I still kind of wish that for all that was talked about Matthew Fox's character's skills and as much of a quick draw as he was, and I understand it's a low budget movie, so they're not going to have the resources to do this. I kind of wish that for all the talk they would have shown something a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but so there's one scene that is. I can read from my notes. It's a scalping.
Yeah.
And then it got so much worse.
Yes, it did.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because holy crap, like that, like I'd known going into the movie, I'd heard on some podcasts saying that there's like at least one scene that's very gruesome. And I saw that, I was like, oh, I don't know what this says about me, but I said, oh, it's just a scalping. And then, as I said, it gets so much worse.
Yeah.
I really loved that as a depiction of the savagery of the tribe. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about it, Tiny?
It was. I keep using the word effective, but it was just so effective, and the reason is because they decided to make this movie really not that gory up until that moment. I mean, there were some plenty of scenes where people were shot and killed, but there was no like gratuitous blood splatter. There wasn't a lot of Tarantino in this. You know, it was pretty subdued action and violence. Yeah, and the violence was all kind of served a purpose. Like, people were injured. We got shots of Patrick Wilson's leg as he's getting worse and worse. Like this was a big set piece. Yeah. Really. And like you said, it was a good demonstration of their the horror of it. Yeah, the savagery. It just made that scene and that moment all the more potent. Is that you build up to it, and that's the only time where you really break out the ridiculous gore. Yeah. And it wasn't even really ridiculous. I mean, I've never seen a man split in half before. Right. But I think it was probably pretty realistic. Yeah. If you were to do that, that's probably what it would look and sound like, I think. And like they went just the right amount of it too, because it's not like he's split completely in half. It's like he's just opened. Yeah. In the middle. Ugh. And it was pretty rough. Rough. It was rough. I shielded Pizza's eyes from it. But yeah, and that was one thing that I kind of felt like that paid off the slow moving aspect of the middle section of it pretty well, because you kind of get this.
I at least got this sense of foreboding. Maybe it's because I knew that there was something coming, like something pretty gruesome coming. But throughout the scenes where they're walking, and then the horses get stolen, and then they're forced to walk, and then Patrick Wilson's kind of left behind there. All of that was it. Like I said in the non-spoiler section, it was just a little too slow for me. But knowing that was what paid off, where it paid off was, it made it a little bit more bearable in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing, and once they actually got to the tribes, the savages, cave, or however you want to say it, and they're locked up, like, that was the moment where I felt like, I didn't know what to expect. Because I mean, you know, you can assume that Patrick Wilson is going to go do his thing. But you also know, like, he's like, they almost amputated his leg.
Yeah.
And then you have Kurt Russell and Richard Jenkins confined there. Like it was so hard to gauge what was going to happen, and that made Patrick Wilson's the rest of his arc play out really well for me.
Yeah.
And then
I think it's worth noting the results of the movie, or the approach to how Westerns are very traditionally, you know, this like male testosterone, like braggadocio, chauvinistic kind of style. All the characters have that quality to them, and in this movie, it's really funny how it doesn't work out that well.
Right.
You know, you get these like cocksure guys like Kurt Russell and Matthew Fox's character, and they get killed because of the way they approach things. They have this, like I said, this braggadocio and this real, you know, we're badasses. We're going to charge in there and take them out and get our woman back, you know, stuff like that. And and that's what a lot of Westerns are, and that there's a certain charm to that, and there's a certain I enjoy that just as much as the next guy. But in this movie, it doesn't work out, and it's really funny that the calm and cool, collected guy and the really intelligent woman find a way to get their way out of this. I don't even remember the female's character, the woman's character. I don't remember her name. Patrick Wilson's wife in the film,
Mrs. O'Dwyer.
Mrs. O'Dwyer. There you go. She is not just your average damsel in distress.
Right.
She's a medically trained, intelligent, educated person who pulls a bullet out of a guy early in the movie, and while she's confined in this cave, she takes account of how many of them there are, and the defining features of them. She just has a very calculating mind, and she's clearly intelligent and equipped mentally to not just have someone come and rescue her. She aids in her own rescue.
It's really interesting, because this is kind of opening my perception of the movie so much more, because like, I feel kind of silly now, because I talked about how, I wish that Matthew Fox had like, they would have shown it. That it kind of seems like that's what they were going for, that they, like you said, they're very they're these very cocksure people, and they're very they're almost archetypes of the genre itself, and then it doesn't pay out for them.
Right.
And maybe that's the reason why we didn't get Matthew Fox doing his thing, because it's not really what the movie's about. The movie's about subverting the cliches of the genre, really. Yeah. While also having some really effective horror elements thrown in.
Right. So in the end, the dumb guy, the woman, and the cripple make it out alive, and the two badass braggadocio guys get killed.
Yeah.
Which, again, a lot of the heroes die in Westerns, but they go out in a blaze of glory, and, you know, it's to save everyone's lives, but really these people save themselves, and the badasses are kind of collateral damage almost.
Right. And granted, Kurt Russell did have a good moment of he got his due. Like, and there was some really incredible stuff with him, like when they put the flask in his wound. It's just amazing. And I got, like, I didn't really get too choked up at this, but the line that he says to Richard Jenkins, he says something like, what did he say? He said something, not say hello to my wife, but
Tell my wife I love her.
Tell my wife I love her. I'll tell yours the same.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
That was a really cool line.
that was great.
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah, I thought that was really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so is there really anything else that we need to go over with this movie?
I don't really think so. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah, me too.
Really quickly, I want to say that I watched this on Amazon Prime. Yeah. You did the same?
I did.
Correct? I actually watched it on my Kindle Fire.
Okay.
Which is obviously an Amazon product. Mm-hmm. And I had never watched an Amazon Prime movie on my Kindle before.
Really?
It's a really cool experience. They have it actually has a direct link to IMDb.
Okay.
So like if you like touch the screen and bring up like the pause menu and fast forward, a little side menu pops up with all the characters who are on screen in that scene. Their little bios pop up on the side, and you can click on it and go to IMDb and learn about the characters. And
that's really. I want to say that Amazon. I don't know if this is the same as their X-ray feature on Kindle, but that sounds about the same.
Yeah, very similar to that.
It's interesting because Google Play has a similar feature. Whenever you rent a movie, they have info cards.
Cool.
Basically, anytime you pause it while watching it, it'll pop up with just circles with the faces of the actors, and it says like their names, and you can click and see that. So that's really cool. And this kind of goes back to some of the conversations we've had in the past about, the rise of digital media anyway. But it's interesting, in this slight tangent, but with Amazon, they've done something really unique, and I don't know if you noticed this or if you've experienced this or not, but they have on their Prime selection for the last like several months, months ago is when they announced it, is that you can download the file. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so like as long as you're on Wi-Fi, you can download it to your device and then watch it like on a plane or at a place without Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. Like at work. But yeah, it's really incredible.
I was just really pleased with their service in that respect. I haven't been overly impressed with the Kindle Fire as an overall tablet, but I think this is true of just about anything. If you're consuming Amazon content on an Amazon device, it really doesn't get any better than that, I think.
Right.
Which you could say the same thing for Apple on an Apple TV, iTunes, whatever. But it actually, like my Amazon Prime membership was up this month, and I was just gonna let it lapse until maybe I got my taxes back, and I was gonna spend the $100. But I was like, you know what, this was really great, and I appreciate all the services of Prime, so I went ahead and paid the $100 and re-upped this week. So
I had it set to auto renew.
Nice.
Which, I got a surprise on January 9th. Luckily, I was able to cover it, but I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, so that's our review of Bone Tomahawk. Yeah.
I dug it.
Me too. Very, very effective. And it makes me really want to see more Westerns, because that's a genre that I'm a little lacking on, really.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to split over to Potpourri?
Oh, Tiny. Oh, Tiny.
Oh, my God.
Oh, Tiny.
You're welcome.
Oh. But yes. So now, so.
I'm hungry now.
Jesus. Okay, so let's do some potpourri.
Let's do it.
I have two things. You have one thing?
Yes, I have one thing.
Sweet. Okay, so I'll start, and we'll kind of sandwich yours in between mine. So back in OV149, which was our Making a Murderer episode, Tiny, you picked a potpourri for me.
I sure did.
Yes, you picked out of the bag, and we got Amazon number 44 on my Amazon watch list, which was Misery Loves Comedy, which is Kevin Pollak's documentary about comedy and the personalities that comedy attracts.
Nice.
And so I watched it. It's about an hour and a half long, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. It was kind of a little unfocused. Like the documentary was separated into segments, which I appreciated. There was like basically I think there was one that was called like the "Oh, look at me" personality or whatever. And then they went through like a segment that talked about influences, and that one I really appreciated because it went through like Richard Pryor and had the comedians that were being interviewed for it talk about their influence and stuff like that. Other than that, it was, like I said, it was kind of unfocused. Like there wasn't really a through line throughout all of these segments. But the thing that stood out to me about it was that freaking everyone was in this documentary.
Wow.
Yeah. Now that I say that, I realize Louis C.K. wasn't in it, which is odd. Because basically, like if you have a favorite comedian that isn't Louis C.K., they were in this documentary. Like, who's your favorite comedian, Tiny?
Mike Birbiglia.
He was in it.
Nice.
Yeah, and but oddly enough, it's not just comedians, not just like stand-up comics. It's like people that are involved in comedy. And the standout for me was seeing Freddie Prinze Jr. speaking very candidly about his father, and who was a comic. Yeah, he was a comic, right? Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, Freddie Prinze was a comic who committed suicide.
Wow.
And so seeing Freddie Prinze Jr. speaking so candidly about his father and speaking about some stuff that his father did and the experience of living in the shadow of his father was really, really amazing and very, very poignant
Wow.
and actually pretty touching. So yeah, so that was definitely the standout of it. The documentary kind of ends with the question of, do you have to be miserable to do comedy, which was a nice punctuation on it, but really everything else before it took precedent over that. It didn't feel like this was the thesis statement that they were going to make throughout the documentary.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say definitely worth watching if you're a comedy fan. Yeah, and you know, just for S's and G's, I'm going to just rattle off all the people that I was able to note down that were in it. So people in this documentary, I have a list. Here we go. Freddie Prinze Jr., Sam Rockwell, Tom Hanks, Louis Black, Jim Jeffries, Sam Levine, Nick Swartzen, Jon Favreau, Kumail Nanjiani, Jim Gaffigan, Amy Schumer, Jimmy Fallon, Paul F. Tompkins, Greg Proops, Lisa Kudrow, Matthew Perry, Judd Apatow, Steve Coogan, Stephen Merchant, Penn Jillette, Whoopi Goldberg, Martin Short, James L. Brooks, Kevin Nealon, Janine Garofalo, Mike Birbiglia, Larry David, Scott Ackerman, Maria Bamford, Mark Maron, Dave Koechner, Bob Saget, William H. Macy, Matt Walsh, Christopher Guest, Jason Alexander, Jimmy Pardo, Dana Gould, David Wayne, Chris Hardwick, Jason Reitman, Kevin Smith, and Rob Delaney. Like,
wow.
There are so many people in this documentary, and I missed several.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really impressive the amount of people that they got. And it is currently on Amazon Prime.
Nice. I'm very interested in that topich.
Yeah,
because it is
really
an interesting dynamic that's really prevalent in the industry.
Yeah, and it's definitely, and they touch on what it means to have the comedy gene, as Chris Hardwick has said.
Yeah.
And it's really well done. I just wish it was a little bit more focused and a little bit more.
Yeah.
I wish that they would have expanded more on the history of comedy, but I guess that's not really what they were going for. But if you want to see a bunch of comedy people talking about comedy and talking about their lives and how not so much how comedy's influenced their lives so much, but why they're attracted to comedy, this is the documentary for you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, Tiny, what's your potpourri? I've heard that this, if you're going with the one that you mentioned in our private chat, I've heard that this one is pretty awful. So go ahead.
Yes. My main topic is I'm going to talk about Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. But really briefly, I just wanted to mention yesterday I started watching The Jinx on HBO.
Nice.
I watched the first 2 episodes and I am hooked.
Nice.
The candor of it is just incredible. Just the dynamic of it is just amazing. So
you've seen 2 episodes.
2 episodes out of 6, right? There's 6.
There's 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's blinking.
I'm blinking. Did you notice that? Did you pick up on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a tick.
It is.
But I'm very intrigued by it. So maybe next week or the week after, very shortly, I will be maybe sharing my thoughts on that.
I'm gonna hold you to next week because I don't think you're gonna be able to not watch it.
Yeah, I'm gonna think you're right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool, you know.
And also, my girlfriend and I are going to start watching Billions on Showtime.
Oh, okay.
With Paul Giamatti and Damian Lewis. I think it looks kind of cool. Mm-hmm. My girlfriend loves Paul Giamatti. I love Damian Lewis. We want a new show to watch, and I think we're nice. So I may also share my thoughts on that in the coming weeks. But Sin City, A Dame to Kill For was not very good. I think the first movie I really like the first movie. It is so cool. It has it's a one-of-a-kind movie. There's nothing else like it. It's such a cool, visually, there's nothing else like it. It's like you're flipping through the pages of a comic book. Mm-hmm. Despite all its shortcomings with the goofy dialogue and some of the acting is a little choppy and stuff like that. I think it's part of the style of the movie, and I think it makes sense for the movie. So I don't count that as a shortcoming of Sin City. But this movie, that luster just wore off right away. It just did not feel like we were looking at meticulously drawn frames of a comic book. Mm-hmm. It looked like somebody just storyboarded it. Ooh. And I think part of that is that I've never read the Sin City comics or any of them, so I don't really know what the central stories are and what I don't know. But I feel like this movie was written as a movie as opposed to the first one was written as a comic and they just made it into a movie. This felt like a movie. They just made a movie and later they made it a comic, I guess. Huh.
I know that that's not the case, but I know that you're saying...
Okay.
I know that you're saying that that's how it felt.
That's how it felt, yeah.
I think that A Dame to Kill For was one of... At least that storyline was from the comics.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I think that there might have been... I'm going off of memory of what I heard on various podcasts, but I think that some of the other segments were made for the movie, but the A Dame to Kill For one was taken from the comic.
Okay. Well, a lot of characters are back. Most notably, Marv, played by Mickey Rourke. He was one of the standouts of the first movie, arguably the standout of the first movie. He was such an incredible character in the first movie. I loved how they explored him, how he was inserted into so many of the stories. Mm-hmm. I really loved that about the first one. And this one, he's also inserted into the stories, but I feel like his motivations for being there are just weird.
Really?
He felt kind of out of place in these stories. I just really didn't get it. I don't think they added much to Marv. He was, I don't know. I feel like for such a multi-dimensional character, they really bottlenecked him into one thing, and I really didn't care for that at all. I was curious to see what they did with him, and I think they really dropped the ball. They added some new characters. I appreciated Josh Brolin in this. He had a very cool exterior. I thought he did fine, but I didn't care about his character that much. I wanted him to be kind of like Clive Owen in the first one, who I thought was also awesome. I loved what he did. But the character just wasn't written well enough, despite Josh Brolin's efforts. And then Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who
I was going to ask about him.
I'm an unflinching fan of his.
Right.
He can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And I loved his performance in this. I thought it was great. But again, the character just served to build up Senator Rourke, played by Powers Booth, he's the primary villain in the first one. Mm-hmm. But he's kind of shrouded in some mystery. I think they kept him very under wraps in the first movie. He's kind of a bit of a mystery and kind of I don't know, mysterious. But in the second one, he's explored so much more, and he seems like much more of an empty character in this, even though they show more of him. I appreciate Powers Booth. I think he's great for that character. He has that gruff voice and those piercing eyes, and he has a very good physical presence for that character, but I just did not really appreciate what they did with him. Just so many of the characters, I think they just took bad directions with them. The same thing for Jessica Alba's character, Nancy. I thought it was a strange direction to take the character in. I really didn't care for it that much. But the new character I really did enjoy was Ava Green.
Okay.
She's an awesome actress, super hot, sexy actress who's just perfect for this role. And she played it perfectly. She was very conniving and just used all her feminine wiles to manipulate the story. She was absolutely perfect for that role, and she nailed it. I enjoyed her character and what they did with her. That was one of the highlights of the movie. But I mean, I would probably give the first Sin City like a maybe as good as like a 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Like maybe like a high 8, almost a 9 out of 10. I love the first movie. This one I'd probably give it like a 4. It was just not woven together well at all and just not worked into the universe well. I really didn't it felt it was just a really choppy elusive kind of story. I really didn't care for it that much.
Okay. Well, that's a shame, but I think that goes with the general consensus pretty well too.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question for you about that. When was the last time you saw the original Sin City? How long has it been?
Oh, it's been years since I've seen it.
Okay, it's been a decade since I've seen it.
So it's probably something I need to look at again.
I'm very curious what you'll think of it, because you said that the style of it really wore off almost immediately for the sequel, and I kind of wonder because I hold the original to high esteem, but I've really only seen it the one time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I own it on DVD and everything, but I've only seen it really in the theater. I think I may have seen it once before when I bought it on DVD, but I kind of wonder, because that visual style was so unique and so fresh, and I kind of wonder if going back I wonder if seeing it now, being so far removed from it, I wonder if that'll come across as a gimmick or kind of cheesy or something.
A crutch kind of.
A crutch, yeah. I wonder if it's and also our age and our perception of the movies. I've at least changed a lot in 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Some for the good, some for the bad, but
it's something we should revisit, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. Because that'd be very interesting to see what each of us think of the original. Because I really like the original. I hold it to high esteem, like I said, but I've been so far removed from it that I kind of wonder if it'll be tarnished if I go back and revisit it.
Yeah.
So, So that's your potpourri.
Mm-hmm.
And to round us out for this episode, I am going to talk briefly about a TV show on Amazon Prime, actually, that I watched. I referenced it in OV151, and I also reviewed the pilot of the show on the website on obsessiveviewer.com. It's season 1 of The Man in the High Castle.
Nice.
Yeah, so for those unaware, The Man in the High Castle was part of Amazon's pilot program, where they post the pilots of their original series and then eventually select which ones they order for a series. They say that the user votes get counted or get put into consideration when deciding it, but also that could be just placebo or something.
Mm-hmm.
But so I watched it and I was really excited about it. It's an adaptation of the Philip K. Dick novel of the same name. It's about basically an alternate history where it's in the 60s, and it's in an alternate world where the U.S. lost World War II and are now occupied by the eastern half of the United States is occupied by the Nazis, and the western half is occupied by the Japanese. And it's a really interesting dynamic and a really interesting world, really, that they create for it. And in the middle, there's this little neutral zone. So a big part of the show, there's several different characters, several different arcs, but there's a little bit of a spy espionage intrigue kind of thing to it. The main characters are Juliana, this woman named Juliana, I can't remember the actress's name, and this guy named Joe, who they're both kind of thrown into the resistance movement that's going on under the noses of the Nazis and the Japanese. And you know, it's interesting. There's I think it didn't quite live up to its premise for the first season for me. It's kind of The pilot episode was a little not rough, but it looked really good, but it was very like CGI heavy and everything. In terms of the backdrops and everything, but once they got into like the normal set design and everything, and it looks pretty clean and pretty crisp, and the world looks really good. As the season progresses, there's some choices that characters make that are a little. It's a little muddled. I mean, it's not bad. It's a really good season of television, and it's a really good spy thriller kind of thing. But there's the way that I would describe it is, on one hand, you look at the actual. I'm all over the place, and I apologize. If you look, if you look at the landscape of television, we have traditionally there's network TV that's kind of. It's got this kind of persona, or this style to it that's very accessible and everything. And then you have basic cable, which is a little more gritty and dark. They can do more things. And then you have premium cable, which is where they have like, very, very big productions and very deep, like The Wire and Game of Thrones, stuff like that.
A lot of creative license.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to describe it. If I were to compare The Man in the High Castle with those three kind of pillars of television entertainment, as if they were like archetypes, I guess, it would be somewhere between basic cable and a little bit on the network side.
Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of a shame. It's kind of there's some performance issues that are kind of I don't know. There's some. I don't know how to describe it. It's been about a week since I've seen it, but I don't know. It's just kind of a little bit lacking for me. I think. By the end of it, I was not over it or not done with it. I was still invested in it, but I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to being done with this season of TV, really.
Okay.
Instead of having being really invested in the arcs and everything, because there's a mystery element in that. There's these film reels that are popping up that show. This was the most interesting aspect of it to me, watching the pilot, was there's these film reels that are being hidden away, or they're being sought out by the resistance, that they're film reels of the United States winning the war. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's introduced as this is what's meant to have happened, and this is our world isn't right or whatever. And they explore that a little bit more, and they show there's some really interesting angles there, and there are some comparisons to be drawn between The Man in the High Castle and Lost in that respect. And I wish that I could make that connection. I wish I could be as invested in this as I was in Lost in the first season. Mm-hmm. But something about it just didn't grip me the way that I thought that it would. But we'll see. I believe it has been renewed for season 2, so we'll see what season 2 does. It ends on a really good note in terms of the mystery aspect of it. Like, I think that if I go back and I watch it as a mystery show rather than an alternate history show, I think I might get a little bit more out of it.
Cool.
Yeah. And to the show's credit, I saw the pilot, and then when I went to the second episode, like, I just kind of had this sudden overwhelming feeling that, granted, I'd seen the pilot about a year ago, and then I rewatched the pilot when the whole season was up. And then when I went to the second episode, like, I just kind of realized, like, the world building and the actual kind of landscape and the culture of this alternate universe is set up really well.
Okay.
It's like there's a character who is being sought after by the authorities in I almost said San Francisco, which is a reference to Big Hero 6 of all things, but Japanese occupied San Francisco. And you kind of get this, at least I got this really overwhelming feeling of, this isn't just a guy that's being evading police or being sought after by the police. This is like, if they find out information about him, or like there's no like legal precedent or whatever, they can throw him into a camp and they can incinerate him. It's just it's really gripping in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah. So the show shows a little bit of promise, but it was ultimately just slightly underwhelming for me.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the pilot and wasn't crazy about it.
Really?
I watched. That's all I've seen of it is the pilot.
Okay.
So yeah,
I did appreciate there were some nice little touches to the backstory of the world. Really, I think this was actually in the pilot episode. DJ Qualls plays the like best friend of one of the main character Juliana's her boyfriend, played by Rupert Evans, who was also in The Boy, the movie. And there's a nice bit of world building and like one line of dialogue in the pilot, because DJ Qualls and Frank, played by Rupert Evans, they're watching TV and they're seeing Hitler, and this is stuff I talked about in OV97, I think. But there's a nice moment where like they notice that they're talking about the idea that Hitler is sick and that there's about to be a power vacuum. That's not really fully explored that much, so I hope that they kind of explore that in future seasons, because I think that angle is really interesting, the kind of Cold War aspect between Japan and the Nazis. But there's one line of dialogue that just kind of blew me away. Was that DJ Qualls says something like, "Well, if so and so takes over or whatever, they won't just." They'll set off the bombs, but they won't just flatten DC like they did before. Flatten DC with the H-bomb. And I was like, it's
crazy.
That's kind of casual.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then my final thoughts on that is that what is interesting about it, since it's in the 60s, we're seeing this world, this alternate history universe, basically, from the perspective of people of a generation of characters who have lived in this world. So there's a nice like underline, like some characters are more compliant and very compliant characters to the general order of things, while the resistance fighters are trying to convince them why it's worth fighting, basically. So yeah, like I said, it was pretty good. A little underwhelming, but shows promise for the future.
Cool.
So Tiny, do you want to pick out of the bag to pick a potpourri thing?
Sure.
Okay, so what number did you pull out?
I got Netflix 201 to 409, which are oddly specific numbers.
Right.
I'm going to go with 245.
245. Okay. Yes. I'm going to look that up. Okay, so you picked number 245, but before I reveal what this is to end the episode, there's a couple emails I want to go over real quick. So, first email is from Andy, who met us at PopCon. The first PopCon, started listening to us and never stopped. Hopefully you're still listening, Andy. But anyway, he sent us an email about Star Wars, and he had a theory about the relationship of a couple characters in the new movie. And even though it's one of the highest grossing movies of all time, I don't really want to give away spoilers, but I originally wanted to do a one-on-one bonus episode with Mike about Star Wars, because we haven't gotten his take on The Force Awakens like in full on the podcast. Unfortunately, he didn't have time. So, but anyway, one part of the email that Andy included in the email that wasn't part of the spoilers or anything was... he said, and quote, "Not to make excuses for Lucas, but it may explain some things about his mindset when making the prequels. I don't remember where I heard it or read it, but someone out there said that the only reason Yoda was brought back for Return of the Jedi was for merchandising reasons, hence bunch of cartoon characters in the prequels."
Okay.
Which makes a lot of sense, and that makes me think that maybe he was... I wonder... I kind of wonder how greedy he was when he made the prequels.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's an interesting angle. That's an interesting way to kind of view Lucas's mindset, because that makes so much more sense than he just went off the deep end and decided to make characters that were incredibly just crazy and weird for various reasons. So. So good eye, Andy, and thanks for listening, and thanks for emailing.
Yeah.
Again, you can email us at Mike, Tiny, or Matt at obsessiveviewer.com. I don't know why I went in that order. And then the second email came from Kim, who's been listening to us since actually part of the email reveals when she was, but she sent me an email about MoviePass, which I talked at length about on various episodes, I think, recently. Which, by the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but MoviePass, like I said in past episodes, it's basically you sign up for a service. In my area, it's $35 per month. And for that $35, you can see one movie every 24 hours using your phone to check into the theater. As long as you're about 100 yards away from it, you have 30 minutes to pay for it using a special debit card that MoviePass gives you, and they print your ticket and all that. In the 1 month that I've had it, I tallied it up. I might do a series of blog posts throughout the year to do this, but in the first month I had it, $35. I had some extra money, so I bought a year's worth of it.
Yeah.
So that factors out to about $32 per month, really, for me. But in that first month, I saw 10 movies.
Wow.
And of those screenings, like, since it's printed like it's like a regular transaction, when you use the debit card, you see the price. Tallied it up, I saw $88.80 worth of movies.
Wow.
And that's amazing to me. And one thing that I didn't really talk about either was how I frequent AMC theaters pretty frequently. So what I did was I got an AMC Stubs card for $9 for the year, and every $100 I spend at an AMC theater using the Stubs card, I get $10 of credit to use toward a ticket or concessions.
Wow.
So, I mean, holy crap. It's a dream, really. I did find out the hard way that you can't see the same movie twice using MoviePass. You just can't. Like,
okay.
I tried to see Star Wars a second time, but they wouldn't let me. But you can. It said you can't do IMAX screenings, but like if you check into an IMAX screening and then use the card, it will pay for up to like $11 of it. Okay. So you'll have to pay like an extra like $4. So what I did when I saw Star Wars was I did the upgrade for IMAX using the kiosk in the lobby, or out inside the doors, paid the upgrade for $4, and then went up to the cashier because I wanted to see it in 2D. My friend and I went and saw it in 2D, and I said like, hey, I got the wrong one. Can I get like one for the 720 in 2D? And they're like, okay, we can just refund you the difference. And I was like, okay, yeah.
Nice.
So that was a loophole I did there. Anyway, so Kim, thank you for emailing. She actually said that she was going to sign up for MoviePass based on the way that I talked about it, and I really appreciated that. And part of her email reads, as I was listening to the Year in Review episode, it hit me that I've been listening to your podcast since your last Year in Review show. You've talked me into and out of seeing a lot of movies in the past year. I loved the bonus episode about the trailers, something that I sent a screenshot to Fecus to tell him.
Nice.
And then she said, Letterboxd is great, so I'm sure MoviePass will be a good fit too. Good luck, and thanks for all the company on my commute.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it was very nice. Thanks for the email, Kim. And I almost responded in saying like, so this is such a weird thing. I'm glad I didn't say this, but I was going to respond with "see you in your car," but I didn't realize like that would sound weird.
Yeah, just a little bit. See
you in your car. So. So thanks for listening. I hope you still listen after that. And finally, on Letterboxd, I posted that I've recently watched The Martian again on Blu-ray. And Yasmin, I don't know how to pronounce that name. I'm so sorry. Yeah. She's like our oldest listener, like since the beginning. Anyway, Yasmin, she commented on my Martian check-in with something interesting. She said, I loved seeing Donald Glover since I thought he'd quit acting, but his scenes felt really out of place with the rest of the film. I was just shocked to see him in the film. And she went on to say that she laughed out loud in the theater when she saw it. And I thought that was an interesting perception of the movie or perspective on it, because Donald Glover is he was really good in Community.
Yeah.
And I was happy to see him in the movie too. Unfortunately, he was just so out of place. So I guess if I wouldn't have known that he was in it, maybe I would have taken to it a little more. It sounds like she wasn't really that into it either.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting. That was interesting. So anyway, thank you for following me on Letterboxd and contacting me on there, and for listening to us for a long, long time.
Yeah, thank you.
We really appreciate all our listeners. And once again, you can email us individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or email the podcast as a whole at podcast at obsessiveviewer.com?
Yeah.
That sounds right. Okay.
That sounds right.
Yeah, so finally, to wrap up the episode, Tiny picked out of the bag Netflix 2.0 whatever to 4.0 whatever out of the bag for my Potpourri next week, and he picked number 245.
Yes.
Which on my Netflix queue is director Tom McCarthy's 2003 movie starring Peter Dinklage, Patricia Clarkson, and Bobby Cannavale, The Station Agent.
That is a great movie.
I am super excited.
Really good movie.
For those who don't know, it's when his only friend. This is the description from Netflix. It's when his only friend dies, a man with dwarfism relocates to an abandoned train station in rural New Jersey, intent on living the life of a hermit. This has been on my radar for a long time, and Tom McCarthy directed Spotlight, did he not?
I think he did, yeah.
I believe he did, yeah, which is really of the time right now.
Nice.
So it's really interesting.
I've seen it. It's a fantastic movie.
I remember you. I think that's the reason why I added it, because you spoke so highly of it.
Nice. Good movie.
Yep. So, but he also directed The Cobbler, so there's that. It's actually his directorial debut. So we'll be back next week with a review of The Revenant. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
and also my thoughts on The Station Agent.
Nice.
So once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks,
Not
guys.
maybe in your cars.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.
Because, like I said, I shut the door on her once, and she started clawing at the carpet in the corner.
Oh, jeez.
And if you see, I have one of those Colts coasters that you gave me
Yeah.
to keep her from doing that.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Anyway, Pizza Roll, the official mascot of ObsessiveViewer.com.
Eat your...
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.